This is Blow Up, when Liz Tilberis transformed Bazaar. You're listening to our bonus episode Q&A with Mario Sorrenti.
The original tagline for Bazaar in 92, when it was the cover of Linda Evangelista, it was Enter the Era of Elegance. When you guys came on board, it was Enter the Era of Cool. That's what we should have put on the cover with your first issue. So let's start from the very beginning. I fell in love with photography when my parents put a darkroom in our basement. Was that the case with you? You had some friends with a darkroom?
Yeah, basically what happened is that my father's a painter and my mother did a lot of work in fashion and a lot of collage work. And she did a lot of things in the early 70s that had to do with, Fiorucci, and we lived in Italy. And then in 1980, we moved to New York. When I graduated from high school, my mom had been styling at that point, and my stepfather was doing fashion photography and catalogs and things like that. And so I knew about the fashion world, but I didn't really know about the more creative side of fashion photography. And it was something that I really didn't want to do anything with at the time. I wanted to be a painter like my father. I loved sculpture, and I was hoping to go to art school. I started taking classes, night classes at School of Visual Arts. It was, the basics and cutting into like cardboard and foam and things like that, and where I'd already been doing a lot of sculpture in high school and painting and stuff. And because my father is a painter, I'd had a lot of experience in oil painting, and I just wanted to get really into it. And I was just really bored, and I met a girl who was going to ICP, and she was studying photography, documentary photography, reportage photography. And we started hanging out, and she had a dark room in her place. She was Italian. She was going to school in New York. And I think she was from the sort of Fiat, Agnelli family. So she had like an incredible loft, and she had a huge dark room and stuff and all these cameras. And she had an amazing collection of photography books. And that was my first introduction to photography as an art form, and printing in the darkroom, and fashion photography as well, because she had some Bruce Weber books and things like that. And that completely just changed my whole entire perspective on photography and fashion photography. And so I just dropped out of school at that point, and I just started hanging out with her and using her camera and going into her darkroom and developing film and printing and just getting fully obsessed with everything about photography. I started buying books. I was obsessed with the techniques. So I started, like studying Ansel Adams and how to expose film. And basically, I just spent the rest of my life after that just taking pictures.
Yeah. And then during this time, you were modeling a little bit. Actually, I have your first photo shoot that was in Bazaar with Kate.
That's great.
It was so great. And it's so classic, like the way Fabian designed it with the collage style. Is this when you met Kate and started dating her?
No, we'd already been dating for almost 2 years by that time. So what happened is that when I was 18, so I was doing a little bit of modeling, trying to make some cash and stuff, because I had moved out and I needed to figure out how I was gonna take care of myself. And I was sent to London to try and get some work out there.
Yeah.
And that's when I met Kate. I was 18 years old. We were at a party. We just kind of started talking, hanging out, and we were kids. I think she was 17, and we just kind of hit it off, and we just were inseparable after that night. I was taking pictures. Maybe it was a year that I'd been taking pictures, and I was trying to make as many connections in London as possible. I spent most of my money on a camera, and then basically I just had like my camera, some luggage, and just trying to get into a dark room to take pictures, to print. And I also had a diary that I was keeping because I couldn't afford to print that much. So what I would do is that I would cut out all the contact sheets and just stick them in my diary to keep track of what I was taking pictures of. And
I remember that diary. Actually, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, isn't that the diary that when you came up to meet with Fabian, that's what you showed him?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about when you first started working with Bazaar, more specifically Fabian, when you came up, you met him, and how this all happened.
So I was in London. I heard that Harper's Bazaar was getting put together. And I heard about Fabian and I heard about Liz Tilberis, and it was just really exciting. So I was like, I have to get somehow I have to get my work in through the door. I had no idea how I was going to do it. And out of nowhere, I actually get a phone call from Fabian. And was it possible that I could go up to the magazine to meet him and show him some pictures? And he knew about my diary. And the reason why I got the phone call was because he had met David Sims, who was already working as a photographer. I wasn't really working as a photographer yet. I had literally done just one editorial by this time. I was really unknown.
Wow.
But I was really good friends with David. David lived across the street from me. And I used to go over there all the time. And I was supposed to assist David as well. He had asked me to go out to Berlin with him and help him out on a job that he was doing. And I was really excited about that opportunity. But then later I ended up turning it down because I ended up getting the opportunity to shoot an editorial for, I think it was for The Face. I can't remember. But so, I was super excited, over the moon about the fact that I'd been contacted. And I really didn't have much to share with Fabian. I had a box of prints and my diary, and that's it. The editorial that I had done didn't even come out yet.
That's amazing. See, it's a real testament to Fabian. He could see talent. He knew it right away, just from your diary, clearly. So you're in London, and then what? You caught a flight as soon as you could to come to New
Well,
York?
yeah. Well, I was going back and forth quite a bit because I lived in New York anyway. My mom and my family
Right.
were in New York. So, I came back home and went up to meet him and just showed him my prints and my diary and stuff. And apparently Fabian was asking David, like, who from your peers do you think I should meet? It was David that told Fabian, oh, you really need to meet Mario Sorrenti. That he's young, he's just starting, but you should really meet him. So I owe that introduction to David.
Yeah, and I think your first story for Bazaar, which I have in front of me, which, is iconic, is this one, which I'm sure you're
Yeah,
very familiar with,
yeah.
Body of Evidence with Kate Moss. I think that was actually before David shot for us. You started working for the magazine before David.
I don't know. I don't even remember, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a month or two or whatever. So you're in the office, Fabian's looking at your diaries, obviously loving it. And then you leave, or did you set
Yeah.
up that you were going to shoot immediately, or how did that all
No,
happen?
the meeting didn't even take that long. I was in the office for like a half hour maybe and left and went back to London and didn't really hear very much for like about a week. But then one night I get a phone call in the middle of the night, and it's Fabian, and I'm on the phone with him, and he goes, yeah, like, we really love your work. It's really beautiful. We'd really like you to work with us, and we would really like to offer you a contract.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, I literally just, I don't know, I died. I mean, it was like a dream come true. So I said, yeah, what an honor. And I knew a little bit about Fabian's work, obviously, because he'd already been incredibly successful and powerful for Italian Vogue and Interview magazine. And, as a young photographer, and the things that were really catching my eye and I really found inspiring were the things that he was in charge of, that he was doing. So for me, it was really a dream come true.
Let me ask you this, and I think I already know what you're going to say, but going under contract with Bazaar meant that you would not be able to shoot for Vogue or Italian Vogue. Did that enter your mind, or were you just like, no, I'm definitely doing this?
You know what? I was like, I'm definitely doing this, but the only magazine I was not allowed to work for was American Vogue.
Oh, so you could do Italian Vogue
I could do Italian Vogue, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And as soon as I started shooting for Bazaar, that was the next thing. I started shooting for Italian Vogue as well. And things went really quickly as soon as I started shooting for Bazaar. It was just like a catapult, basically. And it was very interesting, that story, because the one that you just pulled up, because that was a test in the sense that Fabian already, he knew that he wanted me to shoot Obsession with Kate, but he wanted me to do those types of photographs, which were already photos that I had been playing and testing with personally with Kate. So he kind of set up that shoot with Paul Cavacco as a testament and a statement to prove that I could go and do something, I don't know, like not as a test, I guess. We did those pictures, the pictures came out, and then he used those pictures and my diaries to pitch to Calvin Klein that I should shoot Obsession, the Obsession campaign.
Let's talk about this Obsession campaign for a second, because that's another iconic. You and Kate went to an island, just the two of you, and shot. Is that correct?
Yeah. So basically, what you have to imagine this, okay? I'm been dating Kate for 2 years now, and I've been experimenting, practicing, testing, taking loads of pictures of her constantly in studios, at home. Like I actually even did a photo shoot where I had brought a couch. It was a test shoot. I brought a couch into a studio and did portraits of Kate and her brother on the couch. So I had all these pictures in my diary that were cut out on contact sheets. So when I went to Calvin Klein to meet Calvin and I brought my diary, Calvin just looked at that and looked at the pictures from Bazaar and was like, "Can you do this for us?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course, no problem." So basically they were like, "What do you need?" And I was like, "Well, I need a bed, a couch, and a little place where I can shoot daylight and somewhere on the beach, and send me out there for a week, and we'll spend the first like 2 or 3 days getting tan so that we look good. And then I'll shoot and I'll document the experience." So that's what we did.
And is this correct? Did you find a place without a roof?
Yeah. So that was really incredible, because what was amazing is the wheels of the huge organization that Calvin Klein was. They were like, "Okay, what do you need?" And I was like, "Well, I need like broken down walls with a lot of texture. And it would be great if there was something that didn't have a roof on it so that I could put a huge silk over it." And they actually found it. And then they organized everything. And they were like, "Can you shoot a film for us? Can you shoot a video?" And I was like, "I'm sure I can. It's just exposing film. It's like taking pictures just in motion. I'm sure I can do it." So they actually set me up to have a conversation with the cinematographer that shot Raging Bull.
Oh,
Yeah, which was like mind blowing. And I was talking to him about the black and white scenes where Robert De Niro is fighting, and they're kind of like more reportage looking. And I was just asking him, like, "How did you shoot this? What kind of film did you use? What kind of cameras they used?" And they used Bolexes, and they shot it, on reversal film. And I was like, "Okay, that's what I'm going to do." So Calvin set up for me to do a crash course for about a week and a half to learn how to load Bolex, experiment with different exposures of those films. And literally for like 2 weeks, I just walked around with a Bolex in my hand and just filmed.
wow.
Yeah. They sent just Kate and I and one assistant that would load all the Bolexes for me. They sent us out to, I think it was Jos Van Dyke. We hung out for a few days, got tan, chilled, and then started taking pictures and started filming.
Oh, so amazing, Mario. Jesus, this is like a dream career you had so early on.
It was pretty wild. And imagine must have been 20, 21 years old at this time.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen like this for people. It certainly didn't happen like that for people back then, and it doesn't now. So again, a testament to you, a testament to Fabian, and that was his thing. He took chances on people, and it paid off. Let's talk about Liz for a second. Do you have many memories of Liz?
I would go and meet Liz. Every time before I would do a shoot, I would go and meet Liz in the office, and she would just talk me a little bit through what the issue was focusing on, and, just sort of giving me a little bit of insight about the photo shoot and what the expectations were. And she was really amazing because, first of all, she was very kind and very warm and incredibly generous, just with her personality and the way she would make you feel really at ease. It always felt good to go and see her. She would never say to me like, "Oh, I would really like you to shoot something this way."
Right.
You know what I mean? She never forced anything on me. She would just say, "Hey, we're really excited about you doing this story, and this is what the issue is about." And she was honestly really excited to see what somebody my age with my vision, how they would interpret what they were doing at the magazine for that month. And, every time I would see her, it was just very warm and very nurturing.
Yeah, exactly. So when they would approach you each issue and say, okay, so you're going to shoot with Melanie Ward or you're going to shoot with Paul Cavacco, and, these are the clothes, the designers we're going to cover, would you then input that and then come up with artwork that you were inspired by? Or how would you then take it to the next level?
You know what? It's funny because at that time, it was a different type of thing. Like, we weren't really, I didn't have like the library of references that we have today and that we work with today. So maybe I had like 3-4 photographers that I found really inspiring: Avedon, Irving Penn, Robert Frank, Diane Arbus, Larry Clark. Those were the few at that time that I knew of that inspired me. And I was always really interested in anatomy and the human figure and the way it moved. And what I liked about photography is the ability to use different lenses to distort or change the figure or the perspective of the figure. And so that for me was really interesting. So I would do a sketch about what the composition or the situation for the photograph would be, a very crude sketch. And then I would just go in, and any conversations about fashion would be done between me and the stylist, me and Paul Cavacco or Melanie or so on. So it was very, very personal, the work.
Yeah, it felt it. It showed. It's so beautiful, Mario. So with that said, what do you think is the biggest difference about being a photographer in the 90s when you started as opposed to today?
Huge difference. Huge. You have to imagine, first of all, this very well, is that in the 90s, when you were a photographer, you were in charge of a form or a medium that very few people had access to. People were not taking pictures on their phone. So if you were going to take a picture, you had to take a photograph, get the film developed, print it. There is a process. So automatically being a photographer it was a craft. It was being an artist in a way. And you were very unique on the planet. Whereas today, everybody can take pictures. Everybody has a camera in their pocket. A fashion photographer today, I might get an assignment and there is a lot that goes into the presentation. There's a lot of references. The layouts are already thought of. Everything is considered and the things are photoshopped together and blah, blah, blah. And there is like an incredible, vast machine that puts this medium together so that, we can work as precisely as possible, And back then, it was very personal, very intimate. The crews were very small. People were very patient. As today everything needs to be turned around very quickly. And the relationships between art directors were pretty intimate. Photographer and art director and stylists, they were very intimate and personal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Were you printing, like the body of evidence, for example? Was that your printing, or at this point it was? How long did you continue to print your own stuff?
As soon as I started working quite a bit, I couldn't print everything by myself.
Right.
So what I would do is that I found a few printers. I always worked with one printer, but I worked with a few different ones through all those years. And what I would do is that I would tell them how I wanted the film to be processed. I would go in with the printers into the darkroom and we would print together. I would just stand next to them as they would expose it, and then the print would come out, and I would say, "Oh, that's too contrasty or not contrasty enough." Let's basically would get, say, 50% of the story of the pictures done together, and then they would finish the rest off. And you know what? It's not very far from the way I still work. Even when digital started, I was very excited about, the opportunity to shoot digital. And so I learned Photoshop. I was like, I got to learn Photoshop here. So I started, learning and doing it by myself a lot, and then working with other retouchers, so I still work very intimately and very closely with my printers and retouchers. Yeah.
Amazing. Do you still dabble in film, or are you exclusively digital now?
I don't shoot film anymore. And it's funny, I was asked to shoot film last year, and I did some Polaroids and I shot some rolls of film. And I've kind of become so used to being able to see the image immediately and making adjustments very quickly according to what we're shooting. I have thousands of Polaroids because we used to sit for hours just shooting Polaroids, and I would do 4 pictures a day max.
Right.
So today we're doing, 10 pictures, and we're looking at the pictures as they're happening, and we're adjusting. We're taking pictures like if we were shooting the Polaroids, but every Polaroid is a usable file. I love working this way. I found it pretty frustrating that we just they weren't able to make those decisions as we've come, accustomed to. And I found it even more frustrating that I had to send the film off to be processed by a lab that I had no relationship with. Just the whole process for me was so frustrating. I have no interest in shooting film again.
I love it. I love that you're saying this, because I totally agree. And this question now is a little bit like Sophie's Choice, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there one story that you did during your career at Bazaar during the 90s that stands out to you, or that was maybe a favorite?
I worked at Bazaar for a few years. It was I can't remember exactly how many years, but it was at least 3-4 years, maybe longer. I can't even remember.
I think it was 7.
Was it 7 years? Okay.
Yeah.
And in that time, you have to imagine I started out as a black and white photographer.
Right.
Okay. And I ended by the 7th year, I was pretty well known for my color pictures. They were very different, very dark, very painterly. So I made that growth and that experimentation was all done at Bazaar. That's where I learned. That's the weird thing, is that I actually learned how to take pictures through those years and stuff,
Yeah, which is incredible.
And so as a black and white story, the one of Kate, the first one that I did, is still one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you might say that. It's interesting because Peter Lindbergh also was very black and white oriented.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I think it was with you too, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was a bit pushed to do more color because, magazines, commercial, make money. And I guess they thought that was the moneymaker. Do you feel that you were a little pushed that direction?
I was definitely pushed a little bit to shoot color, because I just had to, I couldn't pretend to be a professional fashion photographer and not shoot color. But also what was happening is that a lot of people were imitating what David and I and other photographers like Glenn and Corin had started doing. So we were pushed by the mere numbers of people that were imitating to change and to experiment and to try different things just to stay different.
Yeah.
So, when I realized that I had to start taking color pictures, that was a big question. What do my color pictures look like? How do I do this? And I started doing a lot of testing, a lot of homework, looking at a lot of paintings and trying to, figure out how do I technically turn color picture into my color picture and stuff. And that was both being pushed by the industry and also by my peer, people that were just saturating the industry with, black and white photography and white backgrounds or black backgrounds and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And you did it so well. I always say having a style as a photographer, but evolving and still maintaining that style is so difficult. And yeah, you did it amazingly and still do. Okay,
Thank you.
last question for you. I know you worked at Bazaar and Vogue. Can you describe, if any, the difference for you as a photographer working for Bazaar versus working for Vogue?
I considered the people at Bazaar like my friends and my family.
Hmm.
I became very close with Fabian in those years, and also very close with Johan and other people that were working there, and also with the stylists, you know. And I never had those relationships at Vogue. Not till later, I became quite friendly with Franca. But really, at the beginning, for at least the first 10 years, of my career, the people at Bazaar I was very close with them, and it was a very intimate journey. And I had a lot of love and a lot of respect for Liz. Yeah, if you can imagine, I'm young, I'm 22, 23 years old, and you have these two different schools. You know, you have the school of Vogue, and then you have the school of Bazaar. And for me, the school of Bazaar was really the more obviously the work that was being done at Vogue was very high level, but I always was happy to be part of Bazaar and not Vogue, to be honest with you.
Well, we were certainly happy to have you. That was for damn sure. Like I said, I think it reinvented Bazaar. It made it so much cooler and it took it to the direction it needed to go at that time.
And
So,
you know, I was surrounded by my peers. David was there, Glenn was
yeah.
there. So who else would I want to be working with my friends and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Oh, Mario, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe. And if you have thoughts, leave a comment below.
Flow Up is hosted and produced by Dennis Galanka and me, Cynthia True. It was written and edited by me, Cynthia True. Original theme song is by Stephen Phillips. Sound design and mix, Eric Weiss. Sound and music editing, Tiger Lily Biscuit. The episode was recorded at Voice Tracks West, The Cutting Room, and Digital Arts New York. Special thanks to Clay Morrow and Matthew Saver.